Hiya, Nine. Firstly, well done on your quizzes last week. They were tougher quizzes because they were more based on analysis, and your averages have really sustained. So well done. There were a few questions that, if people were getting any wrong, they tended to get these ones wrong, and I'm going to go through those first of all today. If you've had a private message off me about the quiz, either about a specific question, please obviously read that, or if I've asked you to have another go at the quiz, please do, because it'll help me to understand where your knowledge gaps still are, and then I can send you a bit more of a detailed one-to-one feedback. So please do that. It's a good opportunity I'm offering you here to get one-to-one feedback, so please do. Okay, so today's lesson, you're not going to learn any new content for Wife in London. It's all about, well, in a way you are, but it's about kind of using what we've already learned and kind of consolidating it and you know, helping it to stick in our brains a little bit better. So let's get started. So first thing I'd like you to do is write the title Quiz Dirt in green pen if you can. And like I said, I'm just going to go through some key questions that tended to cause you to slip up. So the first one was this one. How can we define irony in this poem? Now, a reason that this one I think was quite tricky is because all three of these options are a type of irony, and I did mention all three in the video. But I did pick this question on purpose because it's very important that you can pin down specifically in this poem how the irony is used and what type of irony Hardy's talking about. So it is the one in green. It's the contrast between what's expected and what actually happens. So can you make sure you've jotted that down, please, especially if you got it wrong. If you could have answered that question to my face right now without seeing this slide at all, then obviously you don't need to write it down because that means it's in your memory already. But if not, please jot it down. Writing it down again will help you to remember it because you'll have heard it, you've also written it. Okay, so hopefully that's okay. It's a contrast between what's expected. So she expected, you know, she found out he died, so she expected never to hear from him again. And what actually happens is she does hear from him again. She gets a letter, and that's why the irony is created. Okay, the next question that tricked people up was this one. So which line symbolises the effect of the husband's letter on the wife? Okay, now it's actually the last one, which is not the so 1 second, it's this one. It's the Firelight Flicker. I'll come to Paul's edition in a second. So some of you put it was the postman. Remember, the postman line is really telling us that there's a limited interaction between this woman and the people around her in her community. The postman's not knocking on the door and asking how she is and bringing in a milk for her. He's nearing the house and he's going again straight away. Worm Now Knows, remember, is all about the idea of his body kind of rotting in the ground and it being very brutal depiction of war, presentation of war. So some of you picked those two options. It was Firelight Flicker, and it was this idea that the husband's letter introduces for the first time the feeling of warmth, the firelight flickering. Do you remember it contrasts with the idea of the street lamp being cold in stanza 1. So for the first time we get a sense of warmth in the poem, and that's the effect that the husband's letter has on the wife. And then Paul did come up with this really nice addition, Paul in S1, about flickering and how flickering suggests the warmth of this letter is very fleeting. It can't last. So like a flicker, it will come and go. Yeah, it's not a, you know, it's and a fire will burn out, won't it, just as much as a candle, like in stanza 1. Okay, so that's a really insightful, really thoughtful, clever point. So can you add that down in your notes, please? And if you have an idea like that, please do message me so I can share it with everybody, because, you know, I didn't put that in my PowerPoint, but that is an actually fantastic piece of analysis. So well done. All right, the next question. What does page full suggest? So the thing with this one is, yes, if it's page full, it suggests the letter is really long. Of course it does. But you really need to be thinking about what is Hardy choosing to say here. He doesn't care the letter's really long. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying, oh, look how waffly this husband is. He doesn't ever shut up. It's like this bird. He's instead, he wants you to feel from page full that he was full of hope. It was all about the page full of what he wanted to do when he got home and spent time with her. So really, what it's almost like what's he literally saying versus what is he suggesting here, and you need to try and pin down specifically what we're supposed to feel from that. And if he's written a whole page and it's just bursting with hope for his future, and that's what he really wants us to feel, isn't it? Because that's the irony, that's the tragedy, that he's been, that he's lost now. Okay, so jot that down for me. Again, unless you think you could have answered me immediately with the right answer and very confidently. All right, next one was this one. I think this was the one that most people tripped up on, if they tripped up on any. In which line does Hardy use language most similar to Dulce? Now we're going to move towards trying to think about comparisons between the poems as we get towards the last few weeks of term. But I just wanted to start you thinking in that way. So this was probably the toughest question on the quiz, because you had to remember Dulce and what type of language he used there. So Wilfred Owen in Dulce uses very realistic, brutal language, doesn't he? He's very exposing about war. He wants people to realise how horrific it is. So to me, the quotation from Hardy that's the most blunt and horrific and kind of, well, realistic and just honest about the reality of war is The Worm Now Knows. Okay, so City Lanes of Uprolled is actually about London, so it's not really got any links to Dulce in terms of how he's presenting war. Daisies to Understand is the fact that the wife is confused and can't take in the news her husband has died. Yes, it's negative, and Dulce is negative as well, but it's not very harsh or brutal. It's not saying that it stabbed her in the heart or she was never the same again. It's actually quite a kind of understated image that she's dazed, isn't it? And New Love They Would Learn, again, is more, it's more sorrowful, it's more tragic and sad, whereas Dulce isn't sad, it's angry, isn't it? It's very powerful language. And that's why I think The Worm Now Knows is the most similar, because The Worm Now Knows is just this really crude image of a body rotting in the ground with worms weaving over his hand. It's not very nice at all. All right, so again, jot that down for me, and make notes on what I've said if you needed to, but we will build on our comparison of the poems a little bit. You'll do a lot more in year 10. All right, so don't worry too much. Oh, last one. I just want, only a few of you got this wrong, but because it's so important, I just really wanted to quickly go through it. So please make sure that you've got this clear in your head. That final line about new love that they would learn and how that's lost. Hardy's really highlighting there that war costs us our futures and our chances to grow as people and in relationships. Please make sure you've got that clear in your book and in your heads as well, because the other three things are true. War, well, actually, I don't think war can erase love. You can love even when you've lost somebody, can't you? The wife will never love again. We have no idea if that's the case. She might fall in love again. We just don't know. Certainly war is powerful, yeah, but none of those specifically really link to that last line that as much as that top one. That war costs us our futures. That new love that they would learn is gone. They will not be able to grow together, and they won't get to learn new things together. And that's all that life really is, isn't it? The chance to grow and learn and become different things to different people, yeah, and to ourselves. All right, so make sure you've got that one clear for me. Okay, oh, this one as well, sorry, I've done them in the wrong order, that's why I'm confused. Right, what line from stanza 1 links really well to the fog hangs thicker? This is quite a challenging question, because, and really the reason I've put this in is because if you can make links between two quotations across a poem, then you're into band 4, which is a grade 7. So it was a challenging question, but I did talk about it a lot on the video, so I was hoping that you'd be okay with it. So well done to those who were, because like I say, this is like a grade 7 question really. So this idea of the fog hangs thicker in stanza 3, 'tis the moral, the fog hangs thicker. Do you remember I talked about how that links really well to the idea of stanza 1, that she sits in a tawny vapour? So do you remember I talked about how the line structures are very similar? First line of stanza 1 and the first line of stanza 3. There's a comparison there. The word thicker suggests he's linking back to something. Thicker than what? Well, thicker than yesterday when she was in a tawny vapour, but now she's in a fog. Yeah, so a vapor is like wispy, isn't it? Now we've got an actual thick fog hanging in the air, and it's thicker than this tawny vapor. Then remember as well that this tawny vapor symbolizes or can mean that she's in a state of depression. Well, now that state of depression is no longer just a tawny vapor, it's thicker than that. Yeah, it's hanging over her. She can't see beyond it. Okay, so if you could link those two quotations together in an essay, then you'd be on to grade 7 and above, because you'd be able to cross-reference, you're able to link different language across a poem and explain how they work together to have more of an impact. Okay, so that's the explanation for why that's the right answer there. All right, so what I would like us to do for today is I want us to kind of focus on the key themes in this poem as a way of consolidating our knowledge about it. So this is one last activity, because I want you to take your time with it and do it properly. So I have picked out 4 key themes that you could link to this poem, and that is one of the reasons why this poem is really, really good and useful to know really, really well, because it's what I call a hybrid poem. It's a poem that I don't know if you know about hybrid cars. So a hybrid car is a combination of a car that uses a petrol and a battery, like a electric power to run itself. So it's when hybrids are when things join together, or combinations. This poem covers a range of themes, and therefore it's really useful because it could cover you in your exam for lots of different themes that you get. Okay, I don't want to talk too much about the exam because you've still got 2 years before you get there, but just to kind of give you the background for why I'm taking this approach with it. So the 4 key themes that I think link really well to this poem are loss, war, place and love. Okay, now when you are asking yourself how a theme is presented in a poem, because that's always going to be a question, how is place presented in Away from London? How is love presented in Away from London, etc. There's 4 key questions across the top there that I would like you to ask yourself. So underneath the title, Key Themes, can you please write down those 4 key questions? What aspect or types of this theme does Hardy choose to focus on? What does Hardy believe about this theme? Now, obviously, you have to interpret his language to work that out. What's his attitude? What does he feel towards it? And then finally, and probably most importantly, what do you as a reader think and feel about this theme because of the poem? Because really that's what the writer was writing for. Hardy wrote this to make you feel and think a certain way about this theme. So what is it? And this is about you stepping back and not just being you as an individual, but also thinking about readers as a whole, and different, general readers. What are they going to be interpreting this poem, this theme as through this poem? Sorry, that was a really difficult sentence. Okay, so what I would like you to do once you've written down the 4 questions, pause now if you haven't. I would like you to divide your page now into 4 columns as I've done here on the slide. And obviously at the top of each column, you're going to write the 4 themes. Okay. Now I'm going to take you through as a model how to answer those 4 questions for the theme of place, because I think that's the trickiest one. Okay. And then once I've done that, I'm going to ask you guys to pause the video and have a go at answering these 4 questions for loss, war and love. All right, so I'll go through place with you first so you've got an example, and can you jot this down for me as I go through and pause when you need to. So first question, what aspect or type of this theme does Hardy focus on? So in terms of place, I think Hardy really focuses on how a place can shape a person's emotions. Yeah, he really thinks about how London is miserable, it's full of fog, it's webby, it's cold, and he uses that. Do you remember that idea of pathetic fallacy, that the environment this woman is in is reflecting how she feels? Okay, so that's my thoughts on question 1 for place. For question 2, what does he believe about this theme? I think he believes that loneliness and the coldness of the city adds to the wife's grief. Yeah, I think he really thinks about that relationship, and he believes that because she's in such a horrible place, that she's going to have a worse time getting over. Well, I mean, obviously she's going to have a terrible time because it's grief, but that it's going to be made worse by this place. It adds to it. For question 3, what's his attitude? How does he feel towards it? I think he feels very negatively towards London. Look at the language he uses to describe London in stanza 1. It's webby, it's cold, there's a waning taper, there's a tawny vapor, all the colours of like the browny reddy. Remember, tawny means brownish red. Like it's really negative, dull, horrible colours, and it really reflects, doesn't it, the London of the Industrial Revolution and how it was quite a polluted, overcrowded place to live. So I think he feels very, very negatively towards London. And then finally, how do I think and feel as a reader about place? I think readers realise how much a place can influence a person or make them feel trapped even. She's stuck in this fog now in this cold place. I think that I feel personally that London as a place seems like an uncurring character in this. Like if this was a novel, London as a character would be very uncurring and would kind of almost make everything worse for the people who live there. Yeah. Now, I was not alive in 1899, and pretty sure neither were you. So we have no idea if this is a realistic depiction. It doesn't matter. What matters is the language that Hardy's used in his poem, the choices he's made, the content he's focused on, what he's chose to tell us, and how that makes us feel about the place. Okay, and that's all you need to write down. So, can you have a go now? You can use my sentence openers to help you out in structuring your response. So start with Hardy focuses on, Hardy believes, Hardy feels, readers realise. And then see if you can answer those 4 questions for the 3 remaining themes. When I was doing it, I found probably war the easiest, followed by love quite closely. And then loss was probably the 3rd trickiest. So I recommend you do it in that order. Just to keep yourself motivated, because I do think war is probably the easiest one. But it's up to you. So pause now, have a go, and please do have a go, because if you don't pause it and you just listen to the answers and you've not done any thinking for yourself, then it won't be as good or useful. Okay, pause now. Thank you. Okay, answer time. Ooh, that red's very shocking, isn't it? Sorry. Right, so please do not feel if you've written something that I haven't, that you are have in some way done this wrong. That is not at all the case. In fact, if you've written exactly what I've written, then I'm very scared because you might be telepathic or in my head, and that would be very scary. So please do not worry if you've not got the exact same thing. Just as long as you've got a gist, and if you haven't, all you need to do is add to it, yeah, and take those notes forward over the next 2 years and remember them for when you're revising. That's it. That's all you need to worry about. So try and add my ideas on in a different colour pen for me, please, like we would in class, in green pen if you can. And I'm going to go through each one now. Okay, so I'm going to start with loss, which was the trickiest one, I think. So Hardy focuses, if you have a look, I've used the same sentence opener. So Hardy focuses on how loss is tragic. Very much so. He's not. And it kind of is, you might think, well, that's obvious. How else would someone present loss? But sometimes loss is presented as, or whatever, get over it, move on. Hardy's definitely not chosen to do that, has he? He's very much focusing on the tragedy of loss. And he looks specifically at the loss of life through the soldier. And he looks also specifically at the loss of a husband and also the loss of a future. So there's 3 different types of loss in this poem, which means if you had to write an essay on it, you'd have 3 separate paragraphs there that you could think about. Okay, for question 2, he believes that the loss has stripped the wife of her future. So that's what he thinks, almost like that's the power of loss. He feels loss is overpowering because she's sat in this thicker fog now, isn't she? She's kind of paralyzed by it. And there's a sense that she can't move forward anymore, as we see by what he put in the letter. She's never going to be able to experience any of those things now. Also, what suggests that loss is overpowering is that the quotation dazes to understand as well, and that's a really good one. And I think that the readers realise how much loss can stop time, almost like it stops you in your tracks. Do you remember that word debilitating? It stops you from growing or moving on, and it can just change everything. And that when a person is lost, everyone they know is affected too. Yeah, and that's something that maybe isn't dealt with in other war poems, is it? So really, really, I think important to sort of talk about that element, that he focuses on what loss means to not just the person who's died, but the other people around them as well. Okay, so that's loss. Again, just jot anything down that you haven't got done. Don't worry if you didn't get those exact answers. If you want to message me any answers you got that you think are slightly different and you want to check if they're right, then please do. Right, war. So Hardy focuses on how war is costly to both the soldiers and loved ones at home. So the costs of war he's very focused on. He's not like Brooke, highlighting the beauties of war or the heroics of war. He's just looking at the costs of war. He believes that the war is creating a huge webby misery over the city. So this idea of like the city lanes have uprolled, the webby fold on fold. The city, the decision, the government's decision to go to war has created this horrible fog of vapor hanging over London. Yeah. So like the effect of war is wide reaching as well. It creates this really miserable place. Remember I talked to you about after Princess Diana had died in the video. So I feel like that's what he's getting across there. He feels that war is brutal and there's no romance in it. Yeah, whereas Brooks was very romantic, wasn't it? Oh, it'll all be so idealistic and there'll be an English heaven for me waiting. So it's not like that here. Hardy very much, his attitude towards war is that he thinks it's very brutal and that it's not nice and it's a horrible experience and we shouldn't be romanticising what happens. So readers can realise how much war is very sudden. So suddenly you get the news and someone's dead and that's it. It also leaves people very lonely and it strips them of their futures. Oh, that says off. Sorry, it should say off. So that's the impact of war. So I guess you could say you're forced to think and feel about the impact, the aftermath of war, the way things change back home as a result of it. Okay, so I think war was the one that I found sort of easiest to discuss, and I'm hoping you did as well, in terms of that's obviously the theme you've been looking at the most, isn't it, across the last few weeks. But we'll finish with love, just to be positive. Well, it's not really positive, is it? Because she's lost the person she loves, but it's a positive theme in theory. All right, so love. Hardy focuses on the love between a man and a wife. Now, don't underestimate the importance of just saying that, because that's a really key point about this poem. And he also obviously focuses on the loss of love. Yeah. Now, I haven't phrased that very well because she doesn't stop loving him, does she? Maybe the loss of a lover would have been a better way to phrase it. Because she still loves him even though he's not there anymore. So he believes that love can cause great pain if you lose somebody. So he's not just focusing on positives of love. He actually is really emphasizing that when you fall in love, you take a risk, don't you? Because you put your happiness in somebody else's hands, and if you lose them or if they hurt you, then you can feel intense pain, like the worst pain you could ever feel ever. So the idea, he presents that, doesn't he? And obviously the soldier hasn't chose to leave. He's not chosen to hurt his wife. He's doing his duty for his country, isn't he? But that idea that, losing that person has caused her great pain now. And he also seems to believe that love can inspire, because this soldier is sat in a war zone, inspired by this brilliant future with this woman that he's in love with. And he's hopeful for the future because he's got her to return to. So that's what, love is driving him to have that hope. And that's really nice, isn't it? So, love can create hope for a happy future. So that's the positive side of love as presented in the poem, especially in the last stanza. It's just presented in such tragic circumstances, isn't it? So he certainly seems, I think Hardy's attitude towards love is that he seems to treasure love far more than war. I wouldn't say he even treasures war. I'd say he is very critical of war, although not as critical of war as Wilfred Owen, because of course Hardy didn't go and fight himself, so he didn't have the same anger that Wilfred Owen has. But yeah, so he definitely treasures love. His attitude towards love is very positive, isn't it? He seems to really value it. Even though it can cause this pain, he doesn't at any point suggest that she'd have been better off if she'd never married him. Better the idea of to love and lost than to never have loved at all, is certainly present here. Yeah, and then I feel like readers realise how much love matters. Yeah, that it can inspire, it can hurt, it can make us hopeful. It can strip us of everything. It can take away our future, and also that difference that the letter makes. So how much difference just hearing from someone you love can make to your life, or can have on your life, sorry. So you know, you hear from someone that that you love so much, and it just fills your heart with joy. And I think that, you know, the fact that she gets this letter and we have the firelight flickering and we have this first feeling of warmth, he really makes you realize how beautiful it is just to hear from someone that you love, and how that's a really beautiful process. Again, just in really tragic circumstances. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for today, because I thought that this will probably take you quite a while to write down your own notes, and then also to, you know, pause and jot down all of these. So make sure you've got all this written down. There'll be really thorough notes for you. Well, not all of it, but the bits you needed. And that's it for today. I'm going to move on tomorrow to kind of develop this a little bit further. We're not going to start the Manhunt, which is the final poem, until Thursday. Okay. One last thing to say is I am in work today. I'm actually in school. I've got a department meeting, and also tomorrow I'm in teaching year 12. So whereas in the past few weeks, well, for the whole time of lockdown, I've been at home on my laptop all day and I've been able to respond to you, you know, fairly quickly. There's going to be delay today and tomorrow. So if you have any concerns about this work, can you bear in mind that I probably won't be able to get back to you until after 3 o'clock on both days. So bear that in mind. Don't sit around waiting for me. Move on and do something else. I'm hoping that you won't have any trouble, and that's why I've made sure the PowerPoints have kind of got everything you need in them. But let me know. And please don't let that put you off contacting me. I will check after 3 and I will reply to you then. I just didn't want you to be sat around twiddling your thumb waiting for me to reply. And I'm in a meeting somewhere or teaching year 12. Okay. So take care, look after yourselves. Let me know if there's any questions, and I will speak to you again tomorrow. Bye.